We're gonna start getting going together. Hello, Jia Ying, is that how I say your name there? Sorry, I'm evidently such a Anglophile that I'm not sure about my pronunciation there. Uh,
It's
sorry,
Jia.
Jia Ying?
Yes.
And if you want to share your video, you're welcome to. If not, that's fine too. However, there will be some kind of interactive stuff. James, how you doing over there, a couple of 100 meters away?
Yeah, doing fine, thank you.
Very good.
Well and good.
Well and good, very good. Well, we'll see if other people come and join us. And well, here we go. Hello, Anna. Welcome. Good to see you. So we might have more people who are coming on in. However, those people who know me, which is a few of you here, know that I'm a pretty content-rich kind of person. And so there's a fair bit of content for us to explore today. Inside of this as well, there'll be some time for you to potentially go into breakout rooms. We'll see how it goes on the flow side of things here. But do share with me, who has been having conversations over the last few weeks with more people than they generally would inside of such a period of time? So anybody who's been talking to people extra? Yeah, I definitely have. So what we're really seeing is an activation of relationship which is taking place, which is wonderfully ironic. Welcome, Justin. So cool that you're here, brother. Wonderfully ironic to hear this, you know, social mantra of social distancing taking place. And yet what we're seeing is actually people who are coming together with one another in a whole variety of ways. However, the depths to which we go with people inside of that, it's really up to us. You know, it's up to us where we want to go in our relationships. And on top of that, well, let me see a show of hands here. Who works with people in a one-on-one or one-to-group kind of space, supporting people in some kind of capacity? Okay, great. So that's the majority of people. Oh, I'm so happy to see you again, Emily. It's made me so happy the last couple of times that I've seen you here. Emily's a very dear friend of mine, as you might gather. So with that, given that the majority of us here are supporting people, some of the key things, as I've gone into in other spaces in recent times, that we can support people with are mindset. So what's going on in this thinking space up here? How are we circulating energy through our body with that body-mind link? And then relationships. We can do work with people potentially on their business or career, but it's a little uncertain on those fronts at this stage. So if you're in the coaching space, for example, like I am, I'm finding that right now, although there's certain people I'm working with on their projects, there's also a lot of concentration which is taking place on, as I said already, mindset and relationships. And we're really here today to focus on supporting people in relation to their relationships. Now, I look at this time and go, there is a lot of opportunity and challenge. Sociologists are talking about opportunity and challenge through things like opportunity, there's going to be lots of babies. Challenge, there's going to be lots of divorce. Yeah. So they're just social manifestations of, hey, Rachel, great to see you, darling. Are you in Nepal still? Yeah, you.
Yes, I am trapped here officially, but it's a good place to be trapped.
Yeah, that's like me in Thailand, and I think people are trapped out of Thailand now as well. So anyway,
I am, yeah.
yeah, like you, for example. So sorry, coming back into what I was saying a moment ago, there's these opportunities for people to connect with each other in a really deep way during this time, and there's also potential challenges. Some people are finding themselves having more time with the people who are potentially most important to them than they've had, perhaps, I don't know, since however long. Those people who are adult children who are going back to be with their parents, of whom there is many, I would imagine hundreds of thousands to millions of people around the world, maybe having the longest time together as a family that they've had since they left home. And then there's this extra component. It's not just being home, but in certain instances, you're not allowed to leave home as well. Anyway, this is just my way of creating some kind of context to say that that gives us this unreal opportunity to connect deeply, and also it puts us in potentially a pressurized zone that if there is challenges that are going to be there in the relationships, there's nowhere to run. And I'm really happy to say that there's nowhere to run, because people can spend their whole life running until they get to their deathbed and go, if only I'd had the conversations that matter most. So let's talk about this. We're going to talk about what we can bring to the people that we care for. We're going to go into, I'm going to touch on again this very poorly named acronym for the times we're in, which is HOT LIPS. At a time when lips are being asked to be separate from one another, one of the core communication acronyms I work with is HOT LIPS. So we'll touch on that briefly and what we can learn from that. We're also going to be exploring some things that come from Stephen Covey's interpersonal habits, chiefly seeking first to understand and aiming for win-win inside of our relationships and what that looks like. Now, the first thing that I want to say is that to honor our relationships, it's important that we master our own minds. Yeah. And let's make sure that when we're talking about mind, we have a deep appreciation of how mind can be talked about, explored, and seen. The word mind comes from Minden, and it actually means to love. So some people might think of mind and think I'm just talking about mental processes, but we know that the body and mind are actually one. And when we bring in this other element of, would you mind my child, for example, minding things, it's a different way of looking at the mind. We can look at the mind as a tender force, as a force that's capable of great care. However, we also know that there is things such as the monkey mind. Anybody here experienced any monkey-mindedness recently, where you found your mind jumping about without much control about where or what? Or, as many of you know, Sunny, my good friend and mentor's acronym in relation to the general nature of people's minds is SHIT, scrambled, haphazard, incongruous thought. Yeah, jumps around all over the place haphazardly, incongruously. Now, so when we're talking about relationships, we can't bypass the relationship with the self. We start there. We start with the way that we're thinking about the other people, the way that we think about ourselves first and foremost, the way that we think. Yeah, because we can see our thoughts to a great degree. For example, right now, if I shut up for a moment, just put up your hand the first time you notice a thought go through your head. If you thought at any time inside of that, I'm not thinking, you were thinking. So thought is just a natural part of what is going on inside of the human experience. And we can keep our eyes open for our thoughts, and in that way, have a sense of what is going on in our body-mind connection. Because our thoughts tend to trigger our emotions trigger our thoughts. As I like to say on that one, there's another acronym for you, which is most people think me is their mental emotional cycle. So I have a mental thing and an emotional thing, then a mental thing and an emotional thing. It goes round and round and round in this cycle. Now, if we're wanting to start somewhere constructive in terms of our relationships, we start here with bringing real awareness, real mindfulness to ourselves. Yeah. Now, the mind is also found in the breath. Hold your breath for a little bit right now and sense what it does to your mind space. Relax your breath and breathe deeply right now and sense what it does to your mind space. Welcome, Gabri. There is an exact correlation, hey. There is an exact correlation that we can see between what's going on for us in our breath and what's going on for us in our mind. And so when we're there with people, what happens for you when you're having a challenging conversation with people? What happens to your breath most of the time? Feel free to unmute yourself. I love to hear other voices than my own. I hear my voice a lot, so just unmute yourself.
Shallow breath.
Shallow breaths.
Rapid heart rate. Yeah.
Yeah, rapid heart rate, shallow breath. So when you say shallow breath, breath not coming down too far.
Yeah.
Belly potentially held inside of that. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Not
Leela,
open not allowing the breath to move in to the space of the belly.
Yeah. I can relate to that. Leela, did you want to add to this?
I was just going to say like a shortening of breath, which is what was described as shallow breathing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So we can all recognize that. Now, in this moment, I know I've been saying this a bit, and I might get a reputation as being the asshole man, but can you feel your asshole in this moment? Can you feel right down to your muladhara, to your base in this moment? And can you allow your breath to go down to this level inside your body? And I'm imagining as soon as I've brought our awareness there, you can sense it's accessible. And so this is one of the first things we can do for supporting other people as well in their relationships, is to bring attention to the somatic experience of life, to remind ourselves, to remind them that when they're engaging with people, it might feel like two minds, or it might feel like two egos that are having some kind of interaction with one another, as the case may be. Yet it's actually two universes of energy which are coming into contact with one another. And it depends on our level of awareness as to how much of that our energy that we have to offer somebody. And we can go, oh, we're going to get more complicated. So if you wanted to get more complex in terms of the material, we are going to get there. But it's really a big part of this is as simple as that. And it's breathe freely. If we want to have good relationships, breathe freely. Everyone's aware of mirror neurons, what neuroscientists have identified takes place. For example, if we all look at one another right now and we think inside of our minds, so look at one person and think of that person, may you be well, may you be happy. Just keep that loop going on and send that intention towards that person. And now I'm looking around and I'm seeing that smiles are growing. And I imagine part of that is because you were looking at someone else's face that had some kind of a grin or a smile starting to grow. My point is that we respond alchemically to one another's energy. Yeah. And if we have an openness of body, then we have a space in which we can connect more easily. And so in supporting other people, we start with encouraging people to bring their full self, to bring their full body and being into the conversation. Welcome, Tom. Good to see you, brother. So let's try this differently again for a moment. We're going to do a quick screen gaze again, but this time I want you to screen gaze and hold your breath. Maintain an uptightness inside of your screen gazing. So you're looking at someone, but feeling tension through your system as you do so. Ready? And go. And now relax again. Breathe freely. And perhaps you'll notice that other people that you're looking at right now also look more friendly. Can you see that correlation between just how we are in our body and the way that we feel about ourselves and other people? So if we're wanting to support people in our relationships, we're not just jumping straight to, here's NVC, or here's some other communication strategy. Let's start really in the energetic core. And let's start with something which is always taking place from now until we die, which is breathing. You know, we begin life with an inhalation, we end with an exhalation. In between times, other than when we're doing interesting breath practices, we are more or less just allowing ourselves to have those tides go through us. So we bring awareness there. Now let's get a little bit more cerebral in a way. We're going to talk about roles. Yeah, so roles. A role gets its name from once upon a time, back in ye olden days, like Shakespearean times and so on, when the actors would begin a production, the director or the producer of the theatre company would come with all of these rolls of paper. They didn't have printing presses at that stage, and so everyone would get a roll of paper, and that was your role, and that was the role you would play. Yeah, so that's where the word roles comes from. It comes from rolls of paper for the character that you would be given. In our lives, coming with Shakespeare again, the whole world is a stage. So in our lives, we are walking this stage, and we have various roles. Hands up who is a sibling to somebody. You have a brother or a sister. Okay, great. Hands up who has a parent alive, one or more parents alive. I got 4. So, yeah, so I'm multi on that front. So we're all a child here. I think, I don't know this, but I might be the only person who's a parent here. Has everyone got a friend or more? Has everyone got the role of friend? Yeah. Okay, and then we've all got roles potentially in some kind of professional capacity, whether it be as colleague, collaborator, boss, employee, as the case may be. Now, one of these key things that we can do with people is we can identify what are the roles that are most important to you. So let's put the shoes on your feet, so to speak, right now. And I'm just going to ask you, if you've got something to write on, I'd like you to write down a few of the roles which are most important to you. And that could be things like child, sister, colleague, friend, whatever those roles are. Let's just see if we can get somewhere between 2 and 5 roles which are important to you in your life at this time. Okay. So if you're working with a client or supporting a group, then starting off with a question such as this, if you were going, hey, would you like us to look at what's going on in your relationships? Starting off with a question such as, what are your most important roles? Is a good way to be able to focus in. Also, we can say, can you tell me about what are your most important relationships? But when we talk about roles, we can also talk about something more general. Who do we want to be for our friends? Anybody who's got more than 1 or 2 siblings, for example? Yeah, so if you've got 2 or more siblings, then you might go, who do I want to be as a sibling? And it might be different from one person to the other, from one brother or sister to the other. However, you might also have some clarity about what you want to bring more generally in that role. Now, when we're talking about what we want to bring to roles, Stephen Covey has this idea of think win-win. Think win-win. Has anyone ever had a relationship with somebody where they think everything would be just fine if only the other person would change? Yeah. And do you think the other person thought the same thing at that time, that they were the one who ought to change? Or maybe they thought that you were the one who ought to change. Yeah. So and I know that sometimes there will be anomalies. There will be situations where somebody goes, yeah, I know, it's all me. However, the point is that very often it's very easy for us, especially at the egoic or identity level, for us to point outwards and say this or that needs to change in the other person, and then I'll be okay. They need to do a better job of understanding me. They need to do a better job of listening, etc. And meanwhile, whilst we're thinking those thoughts, we're not understanding them and we're not listening to them either. Yeah. So very often we find ourselves in these cycles of hypocrisy. At least a lot of humans do. I don't want to say that this is you, but a lot of humans do. And a lot of the people that we work with will find themselves in these situations of blaming other people for the status quo. Now, this think win-win idea is that, imagine you're in a situation and anybody ever had some particularly strong arguments, say with a partner or a parent, very heated, where your mind goes out the window and you just throw things at them. And in such a time, generally, we would be in a win-lose mindset. That means I want to win and I want you to lose. Yeah? Can everyone recognize that element that can be there for us? Or we could be with somebody and there's a lot of conflict there and we're just like, oh, I give up. And now we're in a lose-win. mindset, which is, okay, I'll lose, you win, and then we go forward from there. Yeah. Neither of them are actually real, or neither of those are a win, is what I mean. Say, for example, I'm married now for 13 years, and 13, no, we're not married for 13 years, been together for over 13 years. And if I've ever won an argument with my wife, do you think I ended up winning in terms of the way things felt? Okay, I won't say never. There has been one or two times where I've been like, or maybe a few more, where I've made a point where I'm like, aha, and she's gone, yes, I agree with you. But generally when things are in some kind of toxic kind of back and forth with one another, if one of us wins or shouts over the top of in some kind of way and the other person caves in, it's a lose-lose. Both of us find ourselves on the other side with less trust, with less understanding. Yeah. Likewise, when I've been the person who has caved in. And so what I'm putting forward is it's win-win or lose-lose. Essentially in relationship, it's win-win or lose-lose. And therefore, it really asks us if we're wanting to have good relationships, or it really asks us if we're supporting other people to have deep and rich relationships, to start from the premise of doing our best to understand the other person. Yeah. It also asks us to begin from this premise of what do we want to bring to our relationships? So here's a powerful question, and you can reformulate this question, but what do you want to bring to? And then fill in the blank. What do you want to bring to your brother? What do you want to bring to your mother? What do you want to bring to your colleagues? Yeah. It's similar to saying, what are your intentions in this relationship? I would just say that intentions often sounds a little bit mental and doesn't have as much physicality as bringing something. And so when there's words or verbs that have some kind of energy to them, then it can give us more of a visceral or somatic connection to what we're talking about there. So what do we want to bring to somebody? At least for me, lands that way. Of course, you find the questions that work for you. When we focus on what we want to bring to a particular role, to a particular relationship, we're likely to get some standards in place. I brought this up the other day, I believe, maybe it was inside of, I'm teaching a lot at the moment, so I don't know what I said with which group of people. But one of the things that I was talking about is, so I have this, as part of my mission statement, I have all of my roles and what I want to bring to each of them. And so I have 13 roles inside of it. And the example that I often bring up is the one with my brother, because it's the one where I've often found that I've been least present out of the roles that are most important to me, has been my role as his friend and as his brother. And so one of the things that is there inside of what I want to bring to him is consistency and curiosity. Now, I read this every week, and I go through times where I'm reading this 3 times a week, but I read this every week. And when I read that, if I make it more than a couple of weeks, it just feels uncomfortable. When I've set a standard for myself about what I want to bring to a relationship, and I see my words speaking back to me saying, this is what you've said you want to bring to that relationship, and you're not. So what do you want to do with that, Cairo? And so, often the action looks something like this: jumping on a phone, reaching out in some kind of way. So what we can do with people in terms of, first of all, identifying their core roles and relationships, and then focusing on what they want to bring to these people or to these roles, is if that can be as clear as possible in terms of looking like a standard, an actionable standard, that becomes a point of reflection in which that person can thereafter be their own coach to a significant degree, because they'll see where they're in and where they're out of alignment with their own intentions. Does that make sense, everybody? Is there any questions that you have in relation to this before I move on? Okay, cool. So, also from now on, I didn't do this at the start, which I regret, which is if you get me, you can be like this, or if you don't, you can be like that. And if there's something that's going on in our conversation and you're like, boom, yeah, that's something for me too, you can do these little twinkle fingers, which is a way of kind of like, you know, and the crowd goes wild and we get a sense of empathy that goes through the space. So just wanting to invite that we can have some kind of visual dialogue with one another in relation to what's going on there. So let's just practice our tools for a moment. We've got our thermometer, which is from I don't get it through to yes, I do, through to somewhere like that. And we've got our, yeah, I resonate with that. And beautiful. Thank you so much, guys. So with that, seek first to understand. The principle is seek first to understand. This is the next thing that I'm about to share with you is one of the most courageous things that a human being can ever do with another human being, especially with somebody that has known them for some time. Go and interview them about you. Go and ask them what they think about you. Go and ask them some questions that give you a sense of how they view you and how they view your relationship. This is a very vulnerable thing to do, because when we ask a question and shut up, our ego could be inalterably changed by the things that the other person says. Our identity may be well and truly challenged. We could find ourselves hearing things which are, well, anyone ever had Chinese medicine? Real good for you, but bitter to swallow. Yeah? And that's what this kind of medicine can be as well. That when you hear from somebody, so here's a few questions that we could throw towards people, for example. What can I be counted on for? What can't I be counted on for? What would you like me to do more of? What would you like me to do less of in our relationship? What would you like me to start doing? What would you like me to stop doing? Yes, Tara.
Quick one. Is this appropriate if you've known someone for, say, a couple of months and you're in a relationship with them?
Let me turn this back around to you. Does this sound appropriate for somebody who may be in a relationship for a couple of months?
Potentially. I think so. I don't know.
So I want to say everything is context specific. And so it's up to you. Yeah, so it's up to you. Yeah, you know. So I would say that if you've had a threshold of deep connection with one another and you've noticed that there's things where there's times when your dynamic is working effortlessly and there's other time when there's tension, which is part of the dynamic, then there may be things which are there for reflection. What I think is really wonderful in the early stages of a relationship is you are, in a sense, you're laying down the tracks of what kind of relationship you want that to become. At the same time as you're experiencing it, you're creating a foundation for a potential future together. And when, at least I might be in projection right now, but you know, inside of the relationships that I've loved the most, they've been highly reflective. We've really valued what one another is experiencing from the interior, and we've been brave enough to be able to bring that reflection into our dynamic itself and, in a sense, engage in that meta space. Some people have a relationship to relationship of, if you're talking about the relationship, then you've got problems that might be unsolvable. I as a relationship coach for many years, I totally disagree with that. I think it's a juicy, wonderful thing for us to explore. What's going on between us? What would you like more of? What would you like less of? Another question, how can I best support you in our relationship? Yeah, that is such a moment of love. Just say to somebody, how can I best support you in our relationship? Because in that moment, we're moving from being someone who's relating to somebody through expectation towards creating agreement. Because if they share with us, this is how you could support me, and we say yes, now we have a relationship based on agreement. Rather than, this is the distinction I put between the golden rule and what I call the platinum rule. The golden rule, treat other people as you think they want to be treated. The platinum rule, treat other people as they want to be treated. And the only way we find out is by asking. You know, we can pay attention to, of course, I don't want to take away from our intuition, but when we ask, we can find out. Yeah. And then the corollary on the platinum rule is to share with others how we want to be treated, to make requests. Yeah. So it's to elicit requests from others and to share our requests with others. Now, this seeking first to understand and then to be understood, obviously, if two people are doing that simultaneously, one of you's got to give in and be the first one who's willing to share something. However, what often happens with a lot of people that I've worked with over the years, and I've seen for myself as well, is that often people want to be understood and then to understand. They would like to see the other person making an effort to understand them before they're willing to make an effort to understand the other. This is not a rule. This is just a common observation. And what I'm putting forward is that when we work with somebody on going, okay, so how well do you understand this person? What questions would you like to ask them? What do you think their view was on this same situation? When we reorient to the other's perspective, we find some great big blind spots can suddenly be flooded with light. Yeah. So there's this principle here of seeking first to understand and then to be understood. Now, with that, every relationship has a different context. Who's got a relationship right now that's going really well? There's a friend or somebody in you, and there's not much in the way of tensions you talk about there. Great. Now that is an opportunity for us to go deeper in intimacy. We've already got a foundation of trust. And from there, we can potentially go, okay, what can we do together to have even more fun? And so there's tools we can bring to such a place. So one thing that we can do with people who have already, if we're in conversation with somebody, we're supporting them as a coach, as a therapist, as the case may be, and they tell you about their significant relationships and they share with you, you know, I've got a partner or whatever the case may be. And then we ask them, how are things going with your partner? And they go, really well. And then we can still ask, would you like to focus on how you can even honor your relationship with them all the more? This is kind of a strength to strength mindset. Yeah. We're not just looking for problematic relationships. I think that this is a false assumption that can be made in terms of relationship work, that we're always looking for relationships where there's a problem to be able to fix it and therefore be able to have more enjoyment of life. However, let's just play an experiment for a minute. Write down the name of somebody that you don't feel much in the way of issues towards right now. So what I mean by that, write down the name of somebody that when you think of them, you just feel good. And then give me like a thumbs up when you've got the person. Oh, did you write down the name of your beloved there, Emily? Very good. I like it. I'm really glad to hear it, especially at these times. Okay, so give me a thumbs up if you've got that, if you've got a name of somebody. All right, great. Now, I want you to think about this person's strengths. What do you see as this person's strengths or admirable attributes? What do you like about this person? And just write down a few things that you appreciate about this person. I don't know how saucy you're going to get on the page over there, Emily, but I like that you're able to look down at exactly what she's writing there. Okay, so maybe you've got a couple of things there. Who's got at least a couple of things on their page about this person? Yeah? All right, now, what are you grateful to them for? What difference do they make for you? How do they contribute to you? It's all in that gratitude space. All in that contribution to you space. Now, my invitation is to look at what you have on the page there and imagine you sharing that with the person. I was thinking about you today And I wanted you to know that I really appreciate how you're somebody who, whatever it is you wrote there, also I wanted to thank you for. What do you think would do for you, what do you think would happen to your connection simply by doing that? Not that I'm saying that your connection isn't rich and beautiful already, but would it enrich your connection further? To simply communicate with somebody, I was thinking about you. And I wanted you to know that I had these thoughts. I love how you're someone who. I also wanted to share with you my gratitude, because this is the difference you make to me. All right, give me a reading on the thermometer about whether or not you think that's something that, that means yes, that could make some kind of difference to that person and could enrich your relationship. And that means no. So is that a thumbs up in terms of, so simple, huh? So simple, but already in a relationship which is beautiful, we've got ourselves another way to be able to go, hey, you know what? Let's put even more of that beautiful elixir of love into that space together. Yeah. So the tool there is acknowledgement and gratitude. So if we want to support people to enrich their relationships, when there's a foundation and context for there to be an open space for such a communication to take place, we can focus on acknowledgement and gratitude. Yeah. Sometimes when there is a lack of trust, when there is been some kind of conflict, welcome to the space, Gigi, when there's been some kind of conflict inside of a relationship for however long or for however short, there might not be an opening to be able to share with somebody, this is who I see you as, and this is what I thank you for. And then we need to go somewhere else. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So the first thing though is that every relationship has a unique context. Yeah. I got 4 parents and I have utterly different relationships with all 4 of them. I got apparently 3,400 and something Facebook friends. And if I was to meet any of them in the street, it would be a different context of relationship. You know what I'm saying? Every relationship has its own unique context. And therefore, whatever we would do to enrich that particular relationship is going to be somewhat unique. There are some key things that we can play with though, which are pretty generic. And I'll come back to one that I really enjoy pretty soon. Now, so here's some generic questions though for identifying context of relationship and what conversations we might want to have with them. Now, those of you who have received the Voice for Love handout in the past, of whom there's a number here, you'll see these same things inside of that space. But so it's still a reminder for you. And that is, who are the people that are most important to you? Yeah, so we start with a question like that. If we can find out that, then okay, cool. Yeah. Then we can go into, who would you like to talk with? Who would you like to have a meaningful conversation with? The next question gets a little bit meatier, or a little bit juicier rather, and that is, what would you like to talk to them about? Yeah. Then we can focus in on the status quo or the present. So how are things now? We can ask somebody, so what would you like to talk to them about? How would you describe the dynamic as it is? Or how are things now inside of this relationship? The next one gives a sense of where things could go. How would you want them to be? Or how would you like them to be? If you're wanting to take that further, if you want, in a certain sense, if you're wanting to build the motivation to work on the relationship, you could ask something like, what would that mean to you? You know, if they said to you, I would like it to be like this, you'd be able to share, you'd be able to ask them, what would that mean to you if your relationship with them was like that? To be able to get even more of a sense of, this is the importance of this for me. Yeah. Now, from there, you can go organic. What I mean by you can go organic is that, and you could have gone organic through all of that as well. You can just start to find your way in terms of going, okay, so this is the relationship, this is the context, this is how things are, this is how you'd want them to be. All right, so what do you do from here? What ideas can you come up with? So we could go straight into that. Or if we've heard, whoops, excuse me, I just knocked my stand down. If we've gotten a sense of the relationship dynamic, we might also have a range of different tools that we can work with. For example, has anyone got any relationships that they can think of right now where they're like, yeah, you know what, I could apologize for this or that in that particular relationship? I got one that I can think of straight off the top of my head. Yes, thank you, Tara. Thank you, Emily. Now, if you don't, that's all to the good. And, you know, I leave that question with you. Is there anybody that there's any cleanup to do with whatsoever? And so, you know, one thing which is not usually talked about as a communication model, but I think is a super powerful communication model, is ho'oponopono. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for whatever the case might have been. I'm sorry that I haven't been in contact over recent times. I know that I've thought about you however many times inside of that, but I haven't taken that next step and reached out. Please forgive me. It doesn't need to be drama queen style at all. It can just be, I'm sorry for this. Please forgive me. Yeah. And then we can go into that further from there. And whether you go with thank you or I love you is up to you. But I love you. I want you to know that you do mean the world to me and that I want to do my best to honor you and our relationship going forward. Thank you so much for being there and for listening to me. You can see that there's already kind of a draft script inside of that, which can be really helpful. Just putting that to the side, inside of that one sequence of 4 phrases, there is a lot that we can do with these phrases. A simple apology. I'm sorry. It's been shown to be one of the most difficult things for human beings to say to one another. And it's also been shown to be one of the most transformational phrases that we can ever say to somebody. Because in a sense, we're saying, I get where I was out of alignment. I get where to go into Christian parlance, where I sinned in whatever way, where I missed the mark, which is what sin actually means. And I want to learn from it. It's really what the significator is there with I'm sorry. It's not I'm sorry and I'm a shameful bag of poop, but rather I'm sorry. You know, I recognize that I erred and I see that. I'm going to do my best going forward. So supporting people to be able to have the courage to go forth and put their ego, identity, or whatever to the side and simply apologize is a helpful thing that people can do at this time, especially if you are supporting anybody who's inside of a home environment where there may be tension there, which could be held in place by people having blame towards one another. Unconditional apology is much better than conditional apology, at least in my opinion, which means that we can apologize without expecting the other person to do the same. That's their business. Yeah. Now, coming out the other side of ho'oponopono, this is simple, very simple human communication with one another. But thank you, I love you, those phrases don't get tired. Just thanking people. If we're wanting to support people to have rich relationships during this time, having an attitude of gratitude and expressing thanks for whatever it is. Thank you for being there. Thank you for calling me. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for the meal that you cooked. Thank you for the time we just shared with each other. Thanks, that was a great board game. Whatever it is that people may be up to during this time, expressing our gratitude is as powerful a tool as there is for being able to create big emotional deposits in the emotional bank account. Yeah. Yes, Tara.
Sorry, do you mind just running through the questions again? Someone's talking.
Sorry, the ones of the going back to the who, about what, etc.
Yeah. Who is important to you?
Yeah, who is important to you? Who would you like to talk with, or who would you like to have a new conversation with? About what? How are things now? How would you like them to be? what would that mean for you? And then it could start going into the territory of creativity. Okay, so what's that asking of you? What would that conversation sound like? Yeah. Of course, and that's when I started to say I've identified inside of that, we've got a communication model. Yeah. So you know that I have what I call a menu of creator conversations. And this menu of creator conversations is basically going, okay, what are a number of different kinds of conversations that we can support people with? Now, if you're wanting to learn more on that front, I'm running the communication webinars on Mondays, and there's always the recordings which are available on that. And so like there's 11 conversations that are there in that menu. And so I don't want to jump all over the place and have you walk away with nothing there, but you've already got a couple of things that we've identified there, such as using elements of Ho'oponopono, such as using acknowledgement and gratitude as being a couple of key conversations. One of my favorite is the recreation conversation, which I'll definitely be sharing in a more detailed way soon. But essentially, a recreation conversation is a way for someone to take unconditional responsibility for their part inside of a relationship dynamic. And so that's something that we can support people to do, is focus on what can you take responsibility for inside of this dynamic. If you're wanting to shift things here, yes, there's the things that you may want to confront, but before you confront, perhaps you want to clear your part of the cycle, clear your part of the equation. And the best way that we can do that is to be able to articulate how things are, why we've been the way we have been, what the costs have been, and then what our new intentions are. But I'll go further into that in a richer way when we've got time and space to go there. So I foregrounded at the start that we were going to talk about hot lips. And so this is how we're going to round out today. And that is to say that we can support people to practice this range of things. Hot communication. So who's ever been in the conversation and you know what's coming out of your mouth and what's coming out of the other person's mouth is nothing like what's going through both of your heads? You're thinking utterly different things to what you're saying. Now, what happens to a relationship like that over time, of course, is the distance between the two people magnifies. Truth is the common currency that can unite us. And when we are in a space of non-truth or dishonesty, then it's very difficult to have what I'll call a real relationship. You know, a real relationship, a relationship which is based on real stuff, is founded on us sharing our hearts and our minds with one another. I will say respectfully, with what the French say bienveillance, or kindness, benevolence. So I'm not saying here honesty, a good practice with honesty is just say whatever weird things go through your weird mind. Tara looked up at me at least on that one. But you know, often the first thought is not the best thought that can come out of our mouths. We might want to take a breath and go a little deeper and get honest from a place which is more in alignment with a relaxed source. At the same time as that, we can see if we're not honest, if we're not representing truth. Has anyone ever lied to anybody and then felt weird after you lied? Humans lie all the time subtly. The size of the fish grows in the telling of the tale. You know, whatever the thing is, humans have a capacity to stretch the truth. Our memories aren't so great to begin with, to be honest. We might like to say they are, but our memories often shift about what words who said and all that kind of stuff. Who knows? And anyway, the point is, though, that if we are consciously misrepresenting truth, it's very hard to have an open channel. And so honesty is one of the things we can support our clients to do with other people. Have you shared that with that person? No. Okay, so You want to have a deeply connected relationship with them, but you're unwilling to be honest with them. Do you see that there might be some kind of difficulty for you to have that experience then with them? So what's that asking of you? Yeah. So there's skillful means with honesty. But anyway, so honesty. Next one is openness. The O is openness. So if we're going down through hot, O is openness. And that means we communicate with an open mind. Like, to me, I'm very touched that I'm here with you today and that you're willing to listen to ideas that I'm sharing with you that come from many different places and have an open mind in this experience. That to me is touching, because you're in a sense allowing me to touch your mind, my mind to your mind. And that influenceability, when we are influenceable, we're open in our minds, then we have a foundation for having a real relationship. We can take that another level down. So I've got a model here on the openness, that we've got an open mind. So we can see differently, or we can think differently, depending on what comes to us. We have an open heart. That's the next part of openness. Being willing to feel the other like we feel ourselves. Being willing to empathically engage, like we can literally breathe their breath. Yeah. And then we can have an open will. And what that means is we don't need to be the one that comes up with the idea about how we go forward. The idea could come from me, or the idea could come from you. If there was a yawning equivalent to bless you, that's what I would say, Caroline. So these three parts of openness: open mind, willing to think differently, see things differently; open heart, willing to feel ourselves and others; open will, willing to make our way forward with the ideas or the impulse coming from ourselves, the other, a combination, or the space beyond. Yeah. The third part of hot is transparent. It might sound like honesty. It's kind of a subset of honesty, but it means being transparent about our intentions. I'd like to have a conversation with you that addresses a certain thing inside of our dynamic. And I'm also going to try and use a communication methodology to have this conversation with you. So I'm wondering if you'd be willing to bear with me as I fumble my way through this. It's just that I believe it's going to help me to make sure I share everything that I want to. So that's kind of a high level of transparency in terms of the request, a high level of transparency in terms of what something's about and what we're asking of the other person. Yeah, we're asking them for a particular amount of time for their listening, etc. So transparency is very important. People are always scanning and monitoring. What do you want to get from me? What do you want to get from me? And when we're transparent, we can allay those concerns. So that's hot communication. And those are three operational principles we can work with all the time. Lips is different. Lips is 4 essential communication competencies. The first is the most important thing that we have. And you all have done a really good job with it today. And again, I'm touched by it and I thank you for it. And that's listening. It's the greatest gift that we have to give people. Have you ever experienced being really listened to by somebody and just going, oh, they got me? Yeah. You were witnessed, you were felt, you were heard. And inside of that, you were made real. Yeah, me too. And so deep listening is something that we can bring to people. On that, I did like an hour webinar on that on Monday. So you can check that out if you want to check out like the model of 5 levels of listening and so on. But that is something that we can really focus on with our clients as well, and as people. How well do you listen to this person? Do you have a deep level of listening? Are you empathic when you listen? Are you patient, etc.? The second thing, and I'm going to do a webinar on this one on Monday, and that is inquiry. So the I of lips is inquiry, and it's asking good questions. Who has done traveling, like been a backpacker at any time inside your life? Okay, backpackers. Who has gotten bored with the conversation of where are you going? Because it just gives us a horizontal narrative. It doesn't give us a vertical dive into the feelings and consciousness, which is where we're really wanting to connect. We're wanting to connect in terms of our feelings. We're wanting to connect in terms of our deeper ideas. And so when we ask somebody just about a horizontal narrative of I'm going here, then I'm going there, it doesn't nourish relationship in the same way as saying, what led to you going traveling? What have you learned since you've been traveling? Yeah, what are you hoping will happen when you go there, etc.? These are questions that engage the heart as well as the mind. So we can focus on supporting our clients and ourselves also, focusing on practicing good inquiry. Yeah, I like to say the quality of your questions determine the quality of your quest. So every time we ask a question, it's like we open up a quest, a space for us to adventure into. The P is to be present. That might sound like listening. What I'm talking about though there, as well as being really present through your whole body, being present to the space as a whole, being present to energy. And so again, it could be thought of as a subset of listening, or rather listening could be thought of as a subset of presence. But we practice being as present as possible. Yeah. And that begins with, that's why I asked you about your bum holes earlier. It's like, how present are you through your whole body right now? Can you feel your feet and hands? Can you feel the energy and the emotion that's alive in you? Can you sense your attitude in this moment, etc.? Because when we bring our full presence, then we offer the gift of our life force to somebody. And the final part of the LIPS model is speaking, which we often think of as the first thing in communication, but it's actually the last. Because when speaking is sourced inside of deep listening, good questions, and a deep level of presence, there's a lot more data that it's taking into account in terms of what we can say. Yeah. And so on the speaking side, that comes back to hot in a certain sense, being honest, open, and transparent in our communication. Now, with each one of those principles that I've outlined there, if you're a therapist or a coach, you can be asking direct questions about each of those. What's the quality of your listening like? What questions have you asked? What questions would you like to ask? How present are you? What have you said? What have you been willing to speak or say to this person? What have you not communicated, etc.? So you can see there is a little checklist there that can support you to support others in relation to relationship. So in a recap of where we've been today, we've talked about there's opportunities and challenges which are here at this time in relation to relationships. Yeah. The opportunities are fantastic. A lot of people in close proximity, a lot of people who are less busy than they usually are. And therefore we can choose to fill that time with intimacy and connection if we choose to. This begins, if we're wanting to have intimacy, with mastering our own minds, breathing, being relaxed in our own bodies. It's very hard to be intimate when we are guarded. It's very hard to wrap ourselves in a protective coating and then go to somebody else and go, why aren't you opening to me? It does ask vulnerability. It does ask us to open ourselves to others for them to reciprocate in like kind. And we can do that simply through feeling our bodies as a start and breathing freely. Last night I had a communication with somebody who was quite upset, and there were certain things inside of it that had to do with me. And I recognized that the first thought was not my best thought. And so I practiced being silent for 5 to 10 seconds before I'd reply, so that I could go deeper and come from an open space rather than a reactive and defensive space. So we can practice breathing. And now I'm ready. Now I'll re-engage with you rather than react to you. Yeah. We can look at what our roles are, what we want to bring to our different roles. We can then focus on seeking first to understand rather than trying to push something onto others. We can seek first to understand and ask good questions. We can ask about the nature of the context of our different relationships. What do you want to talk to them about? How things now? Thank you so much, darling. Great to see you. Really, really. So appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye. And then we can also go through and we can work with these things that I've talked about of hot and lips to be able to give us different checkpoints there. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to hang out for a little longer if you want to. If you are like, boom, out of here, thank you so much for the time that we've shared. But if you've got any questions or observations, maybe some things have touched a sensitive spot in some ways inside of the conversation. If there's any sharing that you want to do, then I'm happy to turn it over from here. But essentially, it's now 1 hour and I've delivered my content. So I've achieved my goal in terms of sharing with you these things today. I just hope that it's been valuable for you. Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Hey, Anna. Thank you.
It's nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, and yeah, this was really beautiful for me to take a part of. And I had like this yeah, when you because I'm a really lot into breathing at this moment. Like I'm really doing a lot of stuff, and I just realized, like, yeah, as you said as well, when we use the breath, like you can also like catch yourself to kind of step back and like not react immediately. You have this like little pause or like a little room in between, so you can choose. And I also think it's very interesting to kind of look also into the somatic experience, like the nervous system, like it actually does something to your nervous system when you and yeah, I just wanted to add that, like, it's very interesting to like dive into the vagus nerve and the nervous system, so you get like the picture from like many different directions. Yeah, it's like a fuller understanding of that is actually true, you know. And,
yeah, it really it like you say, a fuller understanding of what is true. It's things that consciousness can observe. We don't collapse all of reality down into a single thought or a single reaction, but rather stay open and present to a range of phenomena which are taking place in any moment, and in that way have a deeper relationship to truth and reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
See you, Rachel. Thank you so much. Rachel, who was here today as well, Anna, she's doing a lot of breathwork stuff. I'm a trained breathworker myself. However, that's where Rachel is focusing herself completely. So if you do see her on the Facebook page or in a group message or whatever, and you want to talk with her, you've got a kindred passion there together. Yeah, thank you. Good to see you, Gigi.
Hey, thanks. Good to see you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was meant to have an English lesson, but then it got cancelled, so I jumped on straight away as soon as I knew the lesson was cancelled. Felt very, very bright, so I'm very grateful for that. I'd like to share something.
Yeah, please.
I'm feeling like, I guess, really grateful to be in contact with this information, even though it's stuff I already know. I feel like I need the reminder, need some, external support with that, because I used to be, what I'm experiencing now is feeling like I used to be a hot communicator, honest, open, transparent, and I really valued that about myself, and I look up to people with those qualities more than anything. Like, it's what I aspire for, mentally at least, but really realizing that I've fallen off track, and not in like a self-punishing way. There's been lots of other progress in other areas, but yeah, just, I guess I feel really super humbled, like kicked in the gut with realizing how important these qualities are to me. And the grief of not being, grief's a strong word, but yeah, like acknowledging, wow, I haven't been in that practice, and knowing I haven't been, but I guess feeling a bit disempowered to step up with it or something. And but knowing that I only want to create my life from honesty, openness, and transparent, and then also thinking of, why did it stop? Where did it go? And looking back at the narrative, and I guess vulnerability being, the heart opens and then it gets hurt and it closes up again like a little snail. And just that time that it takes for the the courageous little snail to pop its head open again. And yeah, I guess I feel like I'm coming out of the shell again, like I'm ready and strong enough to be honest, open and transparent again. But yeah, there's still a very tender, raw experience somewhere in here that wants to keep it all to myself and the safety of privacy and the dark cave, you know, I'm safe in my dark cave. But yeah, just realizing who I feel like I used to be out in the light, and I've come to know myself more in the dark little cave. So it's like, yeah, it brings up a lot of, it's exciting, you know, I'm in touch with the essence of that courageousness and the fear of it and the risk, but it's also like, ooh, you know, sends little shivers through me to think of stepping out into that courageousness again. But it's, I know it's what I want. So it's like, I have no other choice. There is no other option. Once you know, have that, what's my option? There's, you know, living a life of mundanity and, you know, non-fulfillment and non-nourishment, or there's the option of being stabbed by life and the beauty of it. Like, so I'll go with that one. But yeah, I'm really so grateful for the opportunity to share that right now, because being witnessed in that, it's like I don't even know many of you besides Gabri, I think. But yeah, I love you. Thank you for listening.
It's really beautiful, Gigi. Are you open to me pulling out a couple of principles from things that you shared that I think many of us could relate
please.
to? Yeah. So you know the recreation conversation, and inside of this recreation conversation, I alluded to it earlier. What it asks us to do inside of our relationships is explore the status quo of things with people. And the second part is to look at what we've gotten from how things have been. And you really spoke about what a lot of us get from not being hot communicators, which is safety, you know, some kind of protection, some sense that I've got myself in a place where no one else can hurt me, or that I'm to some degree invulnerable. And when we can name that to somebody where we feel a distance with them, I know I've pulled away, and I know that there's been some distance between us. And I also want to recognize that in the past I've felt quite vulnerable, and this has been part of me creating protection and security for myself. Not saying that you have any bad intentions towards me or anything, but just sharing that I have been creating safety and security and protection. However, the cost, and this is the motivation for change that you started to say before, of like, I love this image that you said of being out in the bright light, or a phrase like that. The cost has been that I haven't experienced myself being out in the bright light. I felt like a snail in my shell, you know, and in that protection, now I'm going into assumption, but I felt less connected. I felt less intimacy. Now that there as a conversation, to be able to clear a space with somebody, of being able to go, I too know that things have been somewhat separate between us, and I know I've been pulling back, and I've been doing it because, but this is why I don't want to keep doing that going forward. It creates an opening for us to be able to share. See you, Gabri. Thank you so much for being here. It creates an opening for us to be able to share our intentions going forward. And that's one of the key things inside of relationships of real substance and meaning that take place over time, is they can get a context to them that can feel quite solid. And to create a new context asks us to address the current context, why we've been how we've been, what we see as the costs, and then bring that new intention into the space. So I'm not suggesting that's what you do, Gigi. I'm just taking from what you said there, going, that's a way that people can approach such a situation, because what you talked about there, G, is, I know yours is unique, but it's so very common as well in terms of the principles that sit inside of it.
Thank you, Cairo.
I love you.
I love you too.
For those of you who don't know, me and Gigi have known each other since she was 12 years old, and we've been on a big old journey with each other for the last 11 years or so of our lives. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for being a constant marker of, oh yeah, that's what I'm aiming for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, darling. Thank you. Anybody else have anything that you'd like to share? Yeah, please, Tara.
Hiya.
Hey.
I am really glad. First of all, thank you so much for this. It's been like Gigi said, like a marker, because I think everyone at the moment is kind of getting engulfed in this, whereas I'm trying to come out of it and try and have a chance to learn more things and to reach out. So I've posted some things on coaching if anyone wants to talk, just to be listened to for free. No one ironically has got back, but it's like, people want to talk but they don't, but it's okay because I'm just going to keep putting it out there.
Good on you.
And this content is going to be part of it. It's actually more honed in, rather than, because people don't know what they want to say. So whereas this is going to be, okay, we're all doing different roles right now, we're probably all in the house together, is there anything specific? I'm kind of rambling now, but then another observation, I don't know if anyone else is doing like relationships over the phone because they can't live with their other half, or they don't live with them, and that's my situation. And it's so sad because when you're on the phone, you have to, like, almost you have to say what you need because you can't see that person. So like with me, I'm a very like, I want to play mind games, or I'll do this and do that, but you're not seeing that person, so it cuts out the shit, and you have to communicate. So I think, my observation is, for me in this time, is that is a perfect opportunity to have these conversations. Because like you said, you can go your whole life and not have these conversations. That's just me sharing my personal situation. So I think some of these will be good for that. Like you said,
just losing you there for a moment, Tara.
Sorry. Yeah, I think my internet's not very good. But it's just I will use this for other people to help, and for myself, I think. Because over the phone you can't really escape. You can't, it's just, it is what it is. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's. I mean, that's why I was hoping that's what I was hoping would come from this, is that there'd be some things that could enrich that. I just want to say thank you so much for putting out the call to people, or putting out the offer to people. I'm here. Whatever you want to talk about, I'm here to listen. And I don't know what the case will be in terms of if you keep putting that out there, but I do know that it takes humans often several times or a lot of times of seeing the same thing for us to go, actually, she's serious. She means it. She's still there. I wanted to test if you were really listening, and I didn't believe you were really listening. But when I see that you're saying, I'm still here and I'm still waiting to listen, maybe some folks will start taking you up on that. In the meantime, I'm glad you got your partner, you got your friends, and you got your family there with you as well. Yeah. Now, with that, guys, ladies, it's been, again, an honor and a privilege for me to be in this space with you, and to have the microphone, so to speak, in terms of sharing these key principles. I'm on again tomorrow. That's for wholehearted sales, which is, an interesting and different kind of topic. What does it look like for us to share what we're up to with people in an ethical way that feels nourishing and good for us and them? And I'll just keep on rolling for the time being, like for the next couple of weeks at least. There's 3 webinars on a week. And next Friday, there's also going to be an Imagining the World or Reimagining the World party that we're running, which would be like the equivalent of 45 minutes from now. And so it's bringing people together and going, okay, if this has stopped us from going into business, or this has stopped business as usual, do we want to go back to business as usual, or let's get a bit dreamy with one another? What would the world look like if it could be otherwise? And who knows what we can create from such a thing, but I do think that it's a beautiful moment for us to get into a dreamer's space, get idealistic, and imagine a different kind of world with one another. So that's what's going on there. So, and apart from that, I'm always here as an individual. So if you're just wanting to reach out as a friend, I'm here, and I'll do my best to respond and be present with you. But for now, I want to say a big thank you and goodbye, and wishing you well wherever you may be. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Ying.